We need systemic tax reform here. So we don't have a cost of living crisis. We have a cost of corporate greed. By speaking, we have a cost of corporate greed crisis. Yeah, we have small businesses paying 28% tax. We have working people paying a minimum of 30% tax. It is small businesses and working people who are doing the heavy lifting of our economy here, whilst Woolies and Coles are paying 1% tax whilst they price gouge consumers. Now, these guys don't talk about this stuff because these big corporations donate to their parties, and it's a pretty sweet deal that they've got going on. What we're suggesting is actually let's look at systemic tax reform so that we can address these sorts of things in the first place and actually permanently bring down the level of tax that small businesses and working people are paying. They've got more money to wash around in the economy. Small businesses have got more money to be able to invest in research, development, growth of that business. And that's a conversation.
Can I just ask you one before Luke has a go? But can I just ask you one question about the point you made about Coles and Woolies and those big corporations donating to the major parties? I saw a story in the ABC this week that had asked 35 Climate 200 backed candidates to disclose their funding. And I think 19 of them did and 16 of them didn't. And I think you were one of the ones that didn't. Correct me if I'm wrong.
What are you hiding?
Is if you're talking about this transparency and integrity, why wouldn't you make that information public?
We are scrupulous in making sure that we're adhering to the Australian Electoral Commission's disclosure laws.
I understand that, but your movement and your campaign has talked about going further than that. We want to be better than that. We want to be more transparent than that. We want people to have real vision across who's giving what money to who for what reason. Given you've set the bar there, should you not then comply with the bar you've set rather than what the AEC requires at the moment?
That's why we're campaigning for full disclosure, changes to these laws. At the moment, we adhere to the laws. We want to change the laws, but we're not going to cut off our nose to spite our face because we're already underfunded as a community independent campaign. Unlike the two parties, we can't afford to fly up volunteers from interstate to staff pre-polling booths in the last 2 weeks. We are hundreds of volunteers. I've spoken to them.
Can I say, Luke, that you guys have spent more money on advertising, more money on call flutes than I believe I have, and so your budget is obviously quite healthy.
Luke or Phil?
Phil.
Oh, really?
Territorians know that because when they drive around Darwin and Palmerston, they see a picture of Phil on every corner.
Oh, you two sound filthy about the money he's getting. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think there's definitely questions that need to be asked.
He's got a billionaire backing him, Katie. That's my point.
I will get back to that in a second. Right. But, let's not beat around the bush. We know that the major parties do certainly get funding from the unions, and many would argue, the CLP from wealthy developers or wealthy people across the Northern Territory. But look, I do think what's a little bit different is that you don't really have a situation where the ALP or the Liberal Party or the CLP, they know that they're getting money from these big donors and I mean, I don't know who exactly is the major donors to you guys, but it has been an issue in the media this week, Phil, with the fact that that Climate 200 or Climate 2000, whatever they're called, that it is the major donor for teal candidates across Australia. How much money have they provided to your campaign?
I can't tell you. I'd have to speak to our numbers person. But to run when we did the numbers to start with,
ballpark?
I mean that's what I keep getting asked by these guys because they want to know, and I'll be happy to share that after tomorrow. But we are not funded in nearly the same way as these big parties are. They have about 80 shady fundraising entities each across the country. They raise about $500 million from billionaires, from big corporations to fund their campaigns. That you have a bunch of independents across the country who have $25 million between them.
Those billionaires are bad that now fund you?
Who have $25 million between them trying to compete at that level. I mean,
I certainly agree with that on a national stage, right? I agree with that on a national stage. But I think when you're talking about a seat like Solomon in the Northern Territory, it's actually a bit of a different discussion, because I know even for Luke and Lisa, and I'm sure for some of the other candidates that are maybe running for the Greens or for whichever, whoever they're running for, you do have a general idea of who's making big donations to your party. I mean, or to your campaign. You do have a pretty good idea. And I think for, if you're going to run on a campaign of transparency, then it's important that you are transparent.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and like I said before, these guys are desperate to know how we're funding our campaign. We have hundreds of local donors from across our community who've donated. You can also have a look on the Climate 200 website where they're all listed. Yeah. So if you want to know who's donating, it is these folks. But the Climate 200 is a not-for-profit company that fundraises from regular Australians who want to see a change in our politics because they're over the two major parties. So they donate on the understanding that it's going to go towards community independent campaigns just to level the playing field. Now, what these guys would have is for us to be some two-pot independent campaign, scratching around for, a few $1,000s and running it that way. That's the way they'd like to see it. Yeah, but as soon as we get organised and we organise with local people and we actually have volunteers, rather than flying people up from interstate, they start squealing about it. Yeah? Well,
I'm just
any attack on this fundraising is an insult to the people from our community, the hundreds of folks who've donated to and continue to donate to this campaign. And not only that, are putting in hundreds, actually thousands of hours of in-kind volunteer support. None of us are being paid.
Australia, that's abundant in their resources. We have a shortage of gas in this country, and the Northern Territory is poised where we could actually deliver that gas, that much needed natural gas, safely and under regulation to not just the Northern Territory but for all of Australia. We are running out of that. That is a
you
reliable.
You would say that because you take money from the fracking companies. So you're a mouthpiece for them.
That's a reliable.
Well, but Phil, we can't find out exactly where you're getting your funding from either, though. So you
lose
that argument.
So actually, Phil, I'm sorry, but you work for Frack-Free NT, and it's very hard to take what you're saying seriously because anything to do with natural gas.
Yeah, but I don't take money from corporations.
All right, I know our listeners will be interested in this. I did go online and I tried to find all of the people that are donating, and it is literally just a page of names upon names. So it doesn't actually give you, it doesn't actually tell you whether they are part of any business or anything like that. It's individuals' names. It doesn't give you a breakdown of who's donating to the Northern Territory. It doesn't give you a breakdown of who's donating to your campaign. So I did try and go and have a look at that just for the sake of transparency from my side of things, and I wasn't able to get that level of detail that I was hoping for. But look,
Phil Scott, I've got a question for you. You've accepted donations from Climate 200. About a dozen independents who've done so have disclosed the amount. Some of them are very large, $500,000. Here's what Professor Ju Chong Tam from the Centre for Public Integrity has to say to ABC News about this last night.
The question about transparency of funding should be asked of every single party or candidate in terms of informed voting, addressing corruption. But for those who commit and seek to be elected on the platform of integrity, I think they're rightfully held to higher standards.
So why not disclose how much you've received?
We are disclosing all of our donations according to the requirements by Australian law. So we have nothing to hide. In terms of who Climate 200 are, they are a not-for-profit organisation who crowdfund from regular Australians across the country, many of whom donate small amounts on the understanding that it will go towards supporting community independent candidates like me. So what we have in this country is around each of the major parties has around 80 different fundraising entities that are set up and that make about $500 million through means very much unknown to the Australian public. And we are calling that out, and we are calling for better regulation around corporate donations especially, and donations to community campaigns.
Jonathan,